Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. These interviewed are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to past, present, and future legends, as well as business owners, employees, media, and land use warriors. Men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle we call off-road. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world that we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low magazine yet? 4Low magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On this episode of Conversations with Big Rich, I'll be speaking with John Williams. John has been working in the off-road industry for most of his adult life. From building startups, to building rigs, to building rock crawlers, and building racers, to racing, to teaching, John is always moving forward. Hello, John Williams. It's good to get you on here finally. What has it been? About 2 years at least? Yeah, since I first asked you to come and be a guest?
Good morning. It's so good to be here. Yeah, it always seems like there's that next big mountain to climb or something big happening that would be so relevant to talk about. And it's just wait. And here we are 2 years later. But a lot of really good things have happened over the last 2 years.
Okay, well, let's get started with the interview. First question, always the easiest one to answer. Where were you born and raised?
All right. I was born and raised in Logan, Utah, born in 1977 and just grew up in the little old town of Logan.
And John, you have a brother? Any other siblings?
I have a brother, Nate, 3 years younger than me, and a sister, Amy, who's 3 years younger than him. And so we're all 3 years apart.
So all 3 years apart. That's pretty good timing.
Yep, they knew what they were doing. All born birthdays in February, March, and April. So
Logan back in those days was probably pretty rural. Is that correct? A lot of open space?
I sure wish I could go back to those days. Logan was just it was just a big little city. And like I would think back to when I was a kid and my radius of where I could play without telling my parents where I was probably 5 or 6 miles in a circle. And I don't even let my kids play outside without me sitting outside watching them these days. You know, just the greatest time to grow up. A little kind of farming community where surrounding Logan was the big little city there, and great people, hardly any crime, no trouble, just a really good place to grow up and have a fantastic childhood.
So did your mom and dad work in the area? I would assume. And what did they do for a living?
Yep. So my dad was a real estate appraiser, and my mom was his secretary, did all the bookkeeping and billing and things like that. So he was it was an at-home work, so he did everything out of the house. We got to spend a lot of time together in those years, and got to go out and do work with him and help him take pictures of houses and measure houses, and just started really learning what hard work really is. And you know, he never let us be lazy. He always wanted us to be anxiously engaged in a good cause. That was his big thing every day. If we were sitting down, if we started playing Nintendo, it was game over. He's like, you need to go in the garage. You need to go do something other than sit in the house. And so that's where, you know, our love for mechanics and everything kind of stemmed from, was playing out in the garage, because that was really all we could do.
So what kind of things did you guys do to entertain yourselves when you were kids? Did you go motorcycles, bicycles, fishing? What'd you guys do?
So obviously riding bikes was a big deal. We rode bikes and scooters all the time. My dad got us motorcycles. I was 7, he was 4, and I think he learned how to ride a bike when he was 3. And we rode motorcycles with my dad all the time. Our front yard had corner was worn to dirt. That was our goal, was to wear through the grass every year on our motorcycles, so everybody knew where we were riding and driving. We built little jumps, put little 4-inch diameter log with some plywood on it, and jumped the motorcycles in the front yard. And of course, no helmets, like nobody wore helmets back then, and just playing around, being kids, building forts, and hanging out with my dad.
And when it came to schoolwork or as a student, how were you? Were you one of those kids that was always looking out the windows, or were you studious and a good student?
I was a good student for fear of letting my parents down. They always had high expectations, and my dad would always make a deal. If there was something we wanted to do, he would make sure he found a way that we could do it, but he would never let us quit until it was done. So when Nate and I were young, we saw a Bruce Lee movie and thought it'd be the coolest thing ever to be Bruce Lee. So we wanted to get into karate, and so I talked to my dad about it. He's like, here's the deal. If you get in, you're not stopping until you're a black belt, however long that takes. He's like, you will not ask to quit or stop until you've met the goal. And so Nate and I both said, we're game on, we're doing it.
All right, so you became black belts?
Yep, till 7, I think it was midway through my 7th grade year. And then same thing like with scouting, we loved camping, loved hiking, loved doing everything. And I was an Eagle Scout in 8th grade. And so just always doing like everything my dad wanted me to do is what I just believed everything he said. Maybe be a little bit of a naive kid as I was growing up. I didn't really know a lot. I just trusted everything my parents said and did it.
Well, that doesn't happen much anymore. At this time, in life with all the social media and everything.
Yes, nowadays for sure. I sit back and think about stories that I'll tell people from my high school days, and I was so naive and didn't just growing up in Logan, just a naive kid.
Yeah, I truly believe social media is a two-edged sword, and
Yep.
it's great to be able to have it to get information out to everybody and all, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also just paints a picture that is so unrealistic and gives undue stress to the younger generation trying to keep up with those that they see on social media that may not be completely true about their life.
Yeah, it's just crazy when you just trying to keep up with your neighbors and everybody else on social media, and everybody paints such a beautiful, perfect picture of what life is, and it just we all know that what the reality we paint on social media usually isn't reality.
So, as a family, what would you guys do for like vacations or getaways on weekends or whenever you had the time to do something besides your parents working and you guys hanging out in the garage?
Yeah, so my dad had horses, so vacations, we went and did the Buffalo Roundup Island on horses. We'd go mountain biking in Moab. Hunting was a big deal in our family. My dad loved guns and loved getting out hunting, and so we would go hunting quite a bit, whether it was for deer, jackrabbits, whatever it was. We had an old 1971 Land Cruiser that he had bought probably in the early 80s. And it was just our old beater hunting rig that just sat out in the corner of the driveway that every year before hunting season, or if we were going to go somewhere, on a Sunday drive, you'd pull that thing out and spend a week trying to make it run and make it start and work and be good enough to be safe enough to leave. And that was always a lot of fun. We had a great time driving off-road.
So, your house, did you guys have like a shop built on or just a garage?
Just a standard 2-car garage with tools down every side of the garage, the back stacked up everywhere, a shed outside with tools and stuff in it. And My dad always loved building stuff. He wished he would have been a contractor. So we had all the woodworking tools and metalworking tools and welding tools. My mom's dad was an inventor, and he created a machine that would freeze and thaw cement so that the cement mixture companies could test mixtures freezing and thawing and see how the cement would hold up. And my dad would weld the frames up in the garage after work for extra money for all the machines that he built and shipped all over the country.
So it was your dad that taught you how to fabricate?
Not so much me. My brother learned how to weld from him when he was 7. I was more of in the early days, a mama's boy. I'd rather been golfing, skateboarding, mountain biking, doing anything, but I'd had my time working in the garage, and Nate was the mechanical genius of the family that really picked up on that stuff early. I didn't start welding until I was a junior in high school.
So the first car that you had was it one of your dad's, or what did you get?
So the 71 Land Cruiser, that was the kind of what led me into what I do today. Is I turned 16 and I was like, what am I going to drive? And he's like, that. Points at the Land Cruiser. And I'm like, no way. No girls are going to go on a ride with me in that thing. And he's like, well, I'll make a deal with you. If you get in the tech school and go to night school, he's like, I'll pay for you for class, your welding supplies, your body supplies, and I'll pay for the paint job when you get it done, so you can have that car that you want to have and be proud of and drive around. And so I said, deal. And in my limited mind, I thought, I'll be done with this thing in 4 to 6 weeks, so it'll be perfect. I think it took about a year and a half.
So pretty much a complete rebuild. Did you find that the girls, in your school liked 4-wheel drives, or were they hot rod girls? I've heard a lot of guys that had hot rods turn around and say, oh, the girls loved the 4-wheel drives, and that's why I got into them.
I was very lucky to give some girls rides home from school. And it was funny, like I never understood why they did it, because, most old Land Cruisers have an exhaust leak. You get in that thing, start it up, and 2 blocks down the road, you smell like 20-year-old exhaust burning and worn out engine. But for some reason it worked.
So the girls would continue riding with you with all those problems, huh? With the old Toyota?
No, I got complaints every now and again, but I just had to make sure that I didn't lollygog on the way home. I had to make it quick.
But it looked good. Fresh body panels, fresh paint. Was it lifted, or beyond? What did you do beyond that?
So, yep. So it had 28-inch tires on it. And I remember sitting in class, probably when I was supposed to be learning with 4-Wheeler Magazine, and thinking, oh man, I wanted 30 by 950, 15 BF Goodrich all-terrains. I was like, I will be so cool if I can have those tires. And I remember I wanted 31 1050s. And when I finally got it all done, I got 33 1250s. And I just thought I was the king of the world when I was able to do that. But it was we did all the body work. I think from my recollection, I had 22 panels I had to cut out of the Land Cruiser, remake new panels, and weld them in. And it was funny when I'd be sitting and welding, because Nate wasn't in high school at the time, and he couldn't go help me in the class. I think after a while they let him. But I'd start welding, and I'd be like, hey, I just learned today if you use the tip and you kind of move it like this, that the weld works a lot better. And he just looked at me and shook his head. He's like, I learned that when I was 7, dude. And just kind of made fun of me a little bit for doing that. But I do recall that my dad was able to convince, it was Bridgeland, so it was a local tech school. He enrolled in an after-hours welding class, and he talked to the instructor to see if he could bring Nate. I think it was between 10 and 12. And the guy's like, he can come in once and I'll watch him weld. If he can weld, he can stay in the class. And I think he was the youngest person ever allowed to go to that school. I don't think today they would, with all the rules and laws and whatnot, they would allow that happen. But he was able to go to the tech school and do a welding class with my dad and get through that, which was pretty cool for him.
So what kind of extracurricular activities did you do? Were you involved in any clubs or sports or anything?
So snowboarding, golf, mountain biking, skateboarding, rollerblading. more of the extreme sports, climbing. I tried out for basketball, but I wasn't good enough, so I didn't get to do that. Never played football growing up, and played baseball in our neighborhood, but was nowhere near good enough to play on the baseball team. And so my mom was the Utah amateur state champion at golfing. And so she'd grown up her whole life golfing, and I quite liked golfing. And so that was one of the things that I enjoyed doing.
So golf, huh? That's one sport that I never really got into. I went out and tried to hit buckets of balls for a couple of weeks, and then realized that this sport wasn't for me because I was never going to master it to the point where I'd be comfortable, and I'd be just breaking too many clubs, I think, in my life. But then again, I tried to start when I was older.
If I hadn't started when I was younger, I would, and it was like today to pick up a golf club. You know, when you watch golf memes or anything on Instagram, you watch people swing. I was like, I would not even participate if I was didn't learn at a young age how to do it. I'd laugh at myself too much and embarrass myself, so I wouldn't even pick up a golf club.
So do you still golf?
No, I don't really have any time. It'd be kind of fun. I haven't golfed I still have clubs, but I bet it's been 8 or 9 years since I've been golfing.
So the tech school that you're talking about in tech classes, was that like a separate school, like Wyotech or something, or what was all that?
No, it was just an extra thing that you could sign up for and do, and it was predominantly the kids that were, so it was young people, like high school kids, all the way up to adults. So we had older guys that want, back then, fixing up old hot rods. Most every car in the class was an older Camaro, Mustang, my Land Cruiser, old Jeep, or older pickup truck. And it was like guys that didn't have a place to do it, so you could leave your car parked out back. They had a gated area, and then at night you'd pull it out of the gated area, pull it in, and you had access to all their tools, all the space. Everything was there for you. You just had to buy your supplies. And so it really was a fantastic program.
Okay, so it was a high school auto shop program. So what was your favorite class or subject in high school?
Ooh. I don't know, I did pretty well in all the classes. I don't really think I had a favorite. I did not have a favorite. There was nothing favorite for me. Mostly my favorite part was the after school activities, whether it was going mountain biking with friends or rock climbing or something to that effect. That was what I really looked forward to, and school was just what you had to do to get to that point. And I just had to do a good job at school to keep my parents happy with me.
So what about after high school? What did you do?
So when I was a senior, I kind of just spent my life doing what my dad wished he would have done, or what I did. So he wished that he was an EMT, so he got me in an EMT class when I was a senior in high school. So I got my EMT certificate or badge or whatever you want to call it. And then he thought it'd be really, really cool if I fought forest fires. So I got a job fighting forest fires right after high school. And so I did that, then went to Utah State. Thought, like everybody, I wanted to be a rich doctor. Got in my first biology class and realized this is a little bit harder than high school was, and I wasn't driven enough. And so I was like, I got to fix this. And so I dropped out of the medical idea, was no longer there, and I just kind of floated through school. And then in 1996, I was involved in a car accident with my dad in that Land Cruiser, and he passed away. And so when I had a crushed 5 vertebrae in my back and traumatic brain injuries, and they didn't know if I'd be able to go to school again or do anything. So it took me a while to recover, but the Land Cruiser was totaled, and so it was time to build a new one. And that's kind of where my dad had a friend that was a mobile mechanic, and he had taken Nate and I around town and said, if we tell people we work for Robert's Auto, we'll get deals and we don't have to pay full price for anything. So I thought, oh, that's really cool. Who wants to pay full price for anything? And so I remember, had learned working on the Land Cruiser when I was in that body class. Nate had gone out and bought 2 Broncos so he could build a Bronco while I was building the Land Cruiser. And then all my friends thought it was really cool, so they went and got Land Cruisers or had Jeeps. And so I remember grabbing a 4-wheeler magazine, picking it up and calling, I don't remember which suspension manufacturer it was. I think it might have been Skyjacker. I said, this is John from Robert's Auto. I need a 2.5-inch lift for a 76 CJ5. And I saw what the magazine price was, and they sold it to me for $100 cheaper. I had my friend's dad's credit card and ordered it. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever, that I can tell people I work at Robert's Auto and I don't have to pay full price. And so after that car wreck, technology had come about a little bit, and they started asking you to fax copies of business licenses and things like that. And I shared the same name with my dad, and his real estate business was Professional Services Home Occupation. And so I just started being John from John R. Williams and Associates, and started an off-road business and getting deals for my friends and buying all the parts for Nate's Bronco and buying stuff to rebuild a new Land Cruiser after I'd wrecked that one. And got to a point where I decided, I'm going to take a year off of school and see if I can make an off-road shop work. And so in 1996, I got a business license for Mount Logan Off-Road and opened it in 1997. And that's kind of what got me started on where I am today.
So that wasn't a long time out of high school. You were just, 20, 21 years old?
No, I was 20. Yep. I just figured at the time, like, I laugh every day to this day. So I'd worked at EK Accessories making the cat straps with all my friends. And I believe at the time we made $550 or $575 an hour. So my mentality was, when I started, working on cars for people, was if I make $10 an hour, I am twice as rich as all my friends. And I was like, I will be happy being twice as rich as all my friends, because I know I can do everything they want to go do, and I won't have to say I don't have any money or can't do it. And I remember one of my first big jobs was a body lift and body bushings on a 76 CJ7. I think I bid $80 to install it, and it took 24 hours to do the job. I had to rebuild all the body mounts, all the bolts broke. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And it was actually for a buddy in high school. It was his Jeep, and I was like, I learned at that point on, you don't get a bill for 24 hours. When you tell them it's $80, you're doing the job for $80. And I did it for $80. And then I was like, oh man, now I'm half as rich as all my friends that work somewhere else after doing that job. So it's, one of those things I had to learn, and, it took 15 to 20 years to realize, when you're bidding jobs for people, there's some things you just have to make clauses in there so you don't get stuck being the bad guy, or, not informing them right away and telling them a price that dang well it's not going to be. I never wanted to be the person where you said you get someone in the door and tell them $300 and they leave paying $1,000, and then they'll never come back.
Yeah, it can be really hard bidding a job by the hour.
Exactly.
You just never know, what things you're going to run across with a build, whether it's lousy workmanship on previously, or rust or whatever. You just can't always see everything.
Every single day, I'm always making dollar adjustments, and I don't know, I've always been my own worst enemy. When I first started out, I thought, what, I'd look and see what 4-wheel parts was selling shocks for in a magazine, and I was going to be $2 cheaper than they were for everybody. And it's just, it was like trying to learn how to make a living making $2 a shock, and figuring those things out. It was a lot of hard work.
So everything that you did work-wise was under the Mount Logan to begin with?
So I had Mount Logan. We opened for business in 97. In early 2000, I started realizing, as we made parts and we had dry flange covers with Mount Logan and different things, worked with some machine and had our logo put on stuff. Because I wanted, when I built an axle, I wanted it to be mine with my name on it, where everybody saw and they knew right where that had come from. And then I realized that if I wanted to start selling parts to other people, I had to create a business or a name that was not like my shop, my store. And so we created Rockslide Engineering in the early 2000s. So we had a brand that we could sell to all the stores could sell, and it wasn't, someone in Salt Lake selling a Mount Logan part and having people think, why don't I just go up to Mount Logan and get my work done? I wanted to have a brand that would be universal and sold at all shops. And so we created Rockslide at that time.
So you started Rockslide, and then you sold that separately, or how did all that work out?
Nope. So I had been offered an opportunity by Greg Miller to start an off-road shop working with him. And I thought in my mind, I created this big wholesale distribution plan, being able to get parts direct into all the Miller companies, all the dealerships and things like that. And I was like, it was, everybody set the bar at 4-wheel parts. That's success. That's where success was measured in what they were doing. And I thought, man, I could live a little bit of that or have some of that success if I could do that. And so in 2009, Greg wanted to start a business. So I put Mount Logan for sale. I actually gave Rockslide away for free, not knowing that the guys that bought it, that's exactly what they wanted. They wanted Rockslide. So I gave Rockslide away for free in 2009. And that's when they really focused on growing Rockslide Engineering. We created the shell design at our shop, but they brought the electronic step into our design at that time.
So what did you build with under the Rockslide name?
So we had bumpers, diff covers, and rocker guards is pretty much what we built.
So you did all this on your own? Any partners or anything?
By myself, yep.
When'd your brother step in?
Yep, so he was still in high school, and there was a lot of things that he did not, that I could not take apart a locking hub and wheel bearings if my life depended on it. But I had somehow convinced Randy at Advanced 4-Wheel Drive in Salt Lake to allow me to tow a Bronco down and spend a couple days with the tech there, who basically had read everything you could read about setting up ring pinions. I just never done it. So he let me come down. I paid them their labor rate, and I helped do the work with one of the mechanics there, and he taught me, the basics of in and outs of doing ring and pinions and setting gears up. And so that's where that kind of became my specialty, was doing gears. And so Nate would come over after school, disassemble the axle for me. I'd stay all night, do the gears, finish it up in the morning. He'd come back over after school and assemble the wheel ends, and I'd turn the job out the door. And so that was just, we'd just been compatible in that aspect. There was my strong points are not his and his are not mine. And so together we built a pretty amazing team from a knowledge and skill set team,
Well, it's great that you've been able to work with your brother that way, especially in those early years. And how did you guys get into the competition scene?
So I had a friend that had a Bronco, and he had heard about that Farmington, New Mexico competition in '99. He had a yellow Bronco, and he's like, we're going to build that Bronco. And so I basically closed the shop to the public for a month, and we spent that month building his Bronco to go to that first competition. And Nate had his orange Bronco, and we weren't committed. I really didn't know what it was going to be all about. So we went down there and did that competition, and we were hooked. And so the next year in 2000, we started competing with Nate's orange Bronco, and it was a very, very sad day. That thing was just an immaculate work of art, and it banging every panel. But the competition bug is it takes over everything once you get started.
So that first event you went to, was that Cedar City, or did you get to the Farmington event that was before that?
No, I think we only did, well, that might have been our first one. We might have done I know we went to the Farmington one. with the one Bronco, and the next event we went to had both the yellow and the orange Bronco there competing. And I don't remember if that was still in '99 or if we started in 2000, but we were hooked at that point on. So basically from then until today, every dollar we make is spent on competition.
When you base your business around the competitions, I guess that's good for building your business, but it takes about every dollar you have, or it takes a lot of money to sustain that in time. And how many events and how long did you run?
So we basically did everything, every event from that '99 to 2007. And so the last thing we finished up with the U-Rock Rock Cross series was the one we kind of decided that was we were going to hang the hat up for competition for a little while, right when the JK came out. And I was like, we need to focus on making money, and this four-door Jeep is going to be a phenomenal platform. And that's kind of, we just started going hard on that. And then we built a 2008 JK and ran that in the very first when King of the Hammers opened up the EMC. And so it's been, that's where we go to showcase what we can do building a normal car for a normal person, what our skill set is. That's where we try to go show the world where we're at, what we can do, and why, you'd want to call us to talk about your Jeep build or your Bronco build or whatever it may be.
So after Mount Logan and Rock Slide, you're working with the Millers. How did all that get involved with getting out to Miller Motorsports Park?
So, well, we were getting started doing that, so it got a little bit off topic. In that time frame that I put the business for sale, that's when Larry got sick and passed away, and so Greg became the CEO of all the Miller companies, and I kind of got pushed to the wayside, and I ended up working out at the motorsports park 2 or 3 days a week as an off-road operations manager out there. And I'd signed a 5-year, 200-mile non-compete. So I had to move to St. George to be able to keep doing off-road stuff. And so basically later that year, so I sold it in April or March of 2009. And by November of 2009, I had started Impulse Off-Road. And but out of St. George, so I could still build vehicles and still build stuff, and then continued working at the track. We created a Get to Know Your Jeep program where it basically turned into dealer training, where we taught dealers how all the buttons worked, how to use them, and how to be a more effective salesman. And then the program had coupons where the dealer could send the person that bought the Jeep out to the track so they could drive our built Jeeps all had long arm kits, 37-inch tires, bumpers, winches, rocker guards, pretty well built Jeeps. And so the goal was to allow people to come out and drive that built Jeep through the obstacles at Miller Motorsports Park, and then realize if they went to get in the Jeep they just bought, they couldn't do anything. So my want was for the dealers to use it as a tool where they send someone out and then say, after you go to that class, come back and we'll build your Jeep how you want it. Knowing full well that after you did that class, you'd go back and you'd buy the bumpers, you'd buy the winch, you'd buy the rocker guards, the lift, the 37s, because it made you feel so confident. You knew the Jeep was capable of doing it, that you'd want to buy all those. And I kept doing it, and it worked really, really well for me, except building vehicles and continuing on our growth and knowledge on building the Wrangler platform. But the dealers never really caught on to how to turn that into part sales. And then I kind of figured, like, well, this is the Ford Performance Racing School, and Jeeps aren't Fords. And that was the time the Raptor came out, and I was like, oh man, I would really like to have a Raptor. That would be pretty cool if I could have one. And so I worked with everybody at the motorsports park, Dan McKeever. They gave me the opportunity to pitch a Raptor program to all the higher ups and executives from Ford when they came out to the track. And then we created the Raptor Assault program together, and which is still going strong today. We have Raptor Assault, Ranger Raptor Assault, and I think the Bronco Off Rodeo is an extension, not through the Ford Racing School, but of a similar type event, but geared around the Broncos. And that's how that program started in if I started the idea and talking about it in 2011, and our first schools were in 2012.
The Raptors are an incredible platform that I enjoy having. I mean, I've got a 12, and I mean, I drive it everywhere. My Jeep now takes a second seat to everything, and only is used on the trails and gets basically trailered everywhere.
And they're such amazing vehicles. If there was one vehicle if you could only have one to do everything, that is hands down the vehicle to have.
Being able to do the Raptor Assault class would probably be really good for all of those that don't understand the difference
Mm-hmm.
between, the car trying to drive for you and then you driving by the seat of your pants and
Mm-hmm.
being able to shut all those buttons off. It's like when I go off road, or off pavement. It doesn't matter if it's dirt roads or whatever, the sand dunes.
Mm-hmm.
I start turning everything off. The only thing that goes on truly is the off-road mode, just so that the shift pattern's better, especially in the sand dunes. But yeah, just an incredible
Mm-hmm.
vehicle and platform.
Yeah, they're amazing. It's crazy. Like I always think back, like the Gen 1 Raptor would tell you when you got to a point where it was unhappy or where it's like, hey, don't keep going or you're going to break something or hurt something or something not good's going to happen. And the Gen 2 added like 30 miles an hour to that. And the Gen 3 is even more miles an hour. And it's that Raptor Assault program is a great way to get comfortable using all your buttons, looking at all the features that Ford Performance gave you, and being able to manage and use that truck to its full capabilities. It's a phenomenal vehicle. It really is amazing how different the truck is in all the different modes and how you can really take advantage of it. But it makes a bad driver decent, a decent driver good, and a good driver phenomenal if you take advantage of the modes and learn how to use what you're given.
So back to the rock crawling, rock racing. Your last event in the true rock crawling style was the ARCA or the UROC Rock Cross.
Yeah, we finished. I think that was the last season, 2007. It ended after that as well.
Miller Motorsports Park. It was a pretty good location and a pretty great idea. They're just your guys out in the office didn't really perform well. Unfortunately,
Yep.
the guys at the track end of it did really well, but the accounting methods were sure needed help. But it was a great place to compete at, and we did four
Yep.
events there in 2 years. So yeah, it was a great place.
It was great times for sure. It was you had that fantastic park, and the additions that you guys put out there really made it, gave it that extra element of, hardcore, and had the ability to really test some of those vehicles. And then when the short course came and sharing both those two courses together, that was just nothing short of amazing.
So what actually happened at Miller Motorsports Park with the transitions and everything going from, where there seemed to be, the Millers owning it and everything seeming to be, going smooth, and then all of a sudden it was shut down and then reopened, and court cases and all that kind of stuff.
So, well, when the Miller family left the motorsports park, they gave it back to Tooele. They had a 99-year lease on it, and they walked away from the lease. It turned into Utah Motorsports Campus, but Dan McKeever was given the opportunity to buy and take over all the assets for the Ford Performance Racing School. So he moved that off-site, but still in Tooele, and I remained involved with that ever since. So we build the bed cages and light bar mounts for those trucks, help out with Raptor rallies and events like that. And he's been an amazing partner and boss in being there. And I've got all sorts of ideas for the future, and hopefully those start coming to fruition for the Ford School. But it's been a phenomenal experience working with him and learning from him.
That's awesome. I think that's everybody that owns a Raptor or buys one, even if it's a used one, probably needs to get trained in what the vehicle can do. So let's talk about racing KOH. When did you start doing that?
I think we've raced the first 2 or 3 EMC years, and then we took some time off, and we had the one JK. We came back in with newer JKs, I think a 2014 and a 2016. So Nate and I built, I guess I should say Nate mostly built. We had identical JKs. We stretched the wheelbase and back half the frame on it, and we ran the 4500 class. But one thing is, when we've run hammers together, I think every time we've run together, we finish. When we run separate, we don't. And so it takes both of us and both our skill sets working together to finish hammers. And I know we ran 2 years, possibly 3 with those Jeeps. And I think 3 years. On the last year, we finished 5th place in the 4500 class. And stock engine, stock transfer case, all it was a stretch wheelbase, basically stock class, coil spring in the front still, JK. They worked phenomenal. And then after that, we started working with BF Goodrich and developing the Active Air central tire inflation system. So we bought a 2021 JL and built that JL with the CTIS system under it and competed with that until we earned our way onto the Ford team. And so now we're running Ford Bronco for Ford Performance.
And when did the Ford Performance part of that all start? And talk about that.
So we got that. That happened. We got the Bronco last year. So we got it last year, built it, and racing KOH earlier this year was the first race with that Bronco. And we were trying to develop the central tire inflation system for the Bronco. So we really didn't get started. And in November, we found out we couldn't build it the way we needed to build it, or couldn't get it done the way we wanted. So basically, that Bronco was built in 7 weeks and over 700 hours. And it turned out amazing.
That's a pretty incredible turnaround and build time. And when did the whole situation with Ford start?
So yeah, and so in that, I'd raced Baja with the BF Goodrich Performance team in the wide open classes. I think my first time doing that was in 2010. So I'd done that a few times, and so I, not super well versed, but I understood Baja and how to make Baja happen. And then in 23, before we started building the Bronco, Brad Lovell asked us to be on the Ford Performance team, and we ran the Raptor R in the 2023 Baja 1000. So that was my first really big racing effort there. Not that the wide open program wasn't big; it was big and it was amazing. And I really look back, if we had never done, we'd gone to Baja back in 2004, and if you can't finish Baja, you never know how to do Baja. And so being able to be on that 2010 wide open team and finish Baja and seeing all the elements it took to get from the start to the finish line, you gain a whole different perspective on what it takes to do that. And it really does go a long way in your ability to ever be competitive. You have to, have a few things under your belt, and finishing Baja is one of them. And you realize, you don't win and lose that race in the first 100 miles. It comes down to the last 2 to 3 miles generally. And it's how do you mitigate risk and make sure that car is staying together and doesn't have any issues to have a smooth race from start to finish to really be able to win.
So running the wide open cars in Baja, you guys had your own chase crews, or that's a really good program for people to get a start in. What was all that about?
So they had a chase team, but BF Goodrich found soon enough that the chase teams were following the slower cars because they couldn't have to backtrack back to get them. So BFG actually had between 2 and 3 chase trucks that would chase that car down the peninsula, or if we were doing a loop race. But we had everything covered, and it got to a point too where we did all of our prep work. So we would show up early, we would go through and do all the CVs, check all the bolts, paint mark, so that the car, when it raced, it met all of our expectations. And that was an awesome thing that wide open allowed us to do. But again, it's learning. It's like, okay, what type of things do you have to do and check on your vehicle to ensure that you have a car that's put together well enough to finish. And it's been, amazing watching the Huseman's and Lovell put together these vehicles and the work that they do. It's second to none, and it's nothing short of amazing to be a part of that program and the durability testing. And it speaks volume to Ford. I mean, when we go out, we have to durability test at a bare minimum the exact miles that the race is without issue before we're okay to race. And I've gained so much respect for Ford and learned so much in how they go through and do that. And it's just been an awesome experience to be involved in.
So those wide open cars, what teams and who are the names that you got to compete with in the wide open class at Baja?
So Brad and Roger Lovell both did. Lance Clifford, Larry McRae, Kyle Tucker from Detroit Speed. We call it ACP, Andrew Comrie Picard, who does a whole lot of development and testing, doing a lot of stuff with Arctic trucks, doing some crazy explorations. He was on it. There was other guys earlier, they were a lot more varied. I remember the year I went down in 2010, I was not on the BFG team. I was just helping wide open team out. Casey Curry, a lot of good names have really, done a lot of learning in Baja with the wide open program. And it's pretty amazing the way they put that together.
So I'm going to put you on the spot with all those people that you've ridden with or drove with or teamed up with. Who would be probably, you say, the best driver?
Oh man, everybody had their strong suits. I learned a lot. I forgot to mention Brian Finch. He is an autocrosser, and from our side of things in building stock class, you kind of tend to be on I wouldn't say timid side, but the safer, conservative side. And he really pushed me and got me going a whole lot faster. And then, but I think the last 2 or 3 times I did it, Kyle Tucker was my navigator, and I really loved being with him. But everybody always had their strong suits. Lance and Larry were always super competitive and did very, very well. Brad Lovell, I mean, hands down, if you go ride with Brad in the desert, there are not many people that memorize dirt and know how to make that car do what it can do, whether it's a wide open car or a Ford vehicle like Brad Lovell can. So if I was going to say, I would say he is the top.
So your races down in Baja, what was the one besides this last year? What was the one race that stood out the most?
So, I mean, my first win as driver of record with the BFG team was super memorable. All the emotional ups and downs. I had always been, oftentimes, like when we were doing tire development testing for BF Goodrich, we had 2 teams. And I just kept getting unlucky and being on the team where there was an issue with the car. We didn't win, even though one of the cars won. It wasn't mine. And so finally, I hadn't gone and done wide open for a while. Then I'd come back after having kids, and Jeff Cummins put me as driver of record and we were able to win that year. So my first Baja win as driver of record is always going to go down. There was another time, where Bud Brutzman was able to pick the team, and Bud picked us, and I was out with Roger Lovell, and we had this section where it had the tropical storms had come in, and we were specifically told you have to follow the GPS line here. And it was dark. We come up over the hill. The GPS line was straight, and I was just staring. I knew where we were, and I was just staring at the GPS. And we started veering off to the left. I'm like, hey, Roger, you need to get back to the right. He's like, look ahead. And I look ahead, and our map wasn't corrected, and we drove right out in the middle of a lake bed, and it was literally thousands and thousands of feet on any way you look, left, right, front, or back, before we could get solid land, and we sunk that car. And I remember Rogers, we're done. We can't get out. And I was like, I am not telling Bud Brutzman we're done. He's waiting at that next pit. We are not done. And keep in mind, before that, I'd had a bolt strip out on the upper arm into the knuckle, so we had to replace that part of the suspension. We had a transmission go out and had to replace the transmission. And then here we are, way late, and now we're stuck in the middle of a swampy lake bed. So I got out, got the jack out, pulled the tire off. I picked that car up, put the traction boards under it, and the car would literally drive 1 foot past the traction board and sink again. I kept doing that, and I was swimming in the stinkiest, nastiest Baja mud I've ever been in my life. And then I started thinking, I was like, wait a minute. If I air down, I'm gonna have a bigger contact patch and we're gonna float a little bit. So I grabbed a tool. I just started airing the tires down and kicking it. And I kind of aired them down on both sides, jacked it back up, put it on the boards, and we made it like 8 feet. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I did it like 3 times. And then finally I was like, I aired down. I was like, that's as soft as cause we still had 45 miles to go once we got unstuck. And so I was out there with traction boards, the tire, the jack, and I get him set up, get him on it. I put the jack back in the car, and he takes off and he starts going. I'm like, go, go, go. So I'm still out in the middle of the lake bed. I have to pushing the tire, carrying the traction boards, and just wading through that nasty stuff. But we got unstuck and were able to deliver the car back to Bud, and he was able to get it to the finish line. So it ended up being amazing. But the whole time that was going on, like, why do I subject myself to this? Why am I doing this? Why am I here? 10 minutes after you get to the pit, you're like, I can't wait for next year. I can't wait to come back and do this all over again. And so it's just one of those things that you get tortured. We were 18 hours in our section, and it's like, why would I do that to myself? But then when you're done, you can't wait to do it all over again.
You know, those kind of trials and tribulations are one of the allures to Baja. Did Bud know why you were so late?
Oh, he was well aware. I mean, he heard the calls out for 3,000 feet of tow rope. I had literally walked like to a stuck car, and I was like, can you guys help get us out? He's like, no. He's like, there's no way. I was like, I'm barely able to get myself out. I can't drive around. I can't drive out to the middle. I can't get you out. And it was either just be stuck there and wait for hours for the wide open teams to catch up. They had Hummers and cars and things, but I still don't know how they would have got us out. It would have been just a bigger team effort of airing down and doing what we were doing to get out, but we made it.
So you just had to keep going forward. There was no way to just back out of it.
Yeah, we were veering off to the lake. Yeah, we couldn't backtrack. Was not. We were so far out there. We didn't even think about going backwards. To be honest, that never registered. It was just go forward and get out of where we were. I mean, it was so bad. It just sunk right to the belly pan, just sat down right on it. And so I had to bury the tire, put the jack on the tire to pick the car up because it was the only thing big enough so it would sink quite a bit. And it would start picking the car up and get it tall enough to put the traction boards under. And I was like, I was not giving up. I was not going to be the one that didn't give Bud Brutzman his car.
So what's your most memorable story from KOH?
Oh man, KOH is full of stories. First story in, first time we raced, I had this weld when the axle was built and they welded the C on, the weld cracked. I was like 5 miles in, I couldn't steer anymore, and the driver tire was turning left to right, and the knuckle had rolled forward. So when the passenger side was steering, it was falling over on itself. And we stuck a jack handle onto the tie rod and spun that thing around and pulled the onboard welder out and got welds on there well enough that we got to the rough stuff pit, and they welded that thing like nobody's business. And we were able to finish that first DMC hammers. And that was a phenomenal year. Memorable years this past year, running the Bronco for the first time after 7 weeks of nearly killing yourself, and all the efforts the Ford engineers put in. We were in a solid third place in the last 2 rock trails. We didn't ever have time to pre-run, and I had left-right options in the last 2 trails, and I went left on both of them, and the way you were supposed to go was right. And I watched vehicles that ended up being third and fourth pass me in those sections. And I know when we got out of the last rock trail, the one car that got fourth was 10 minutes ahead of us, and I drove that thing like I wasn't giving up, and we ended up beating them to the finish line after they were that far ahead of us. And it's not that far. I mean, I don't know if it's 10 miles or what it is when you come out of those trails, run down the backside of the desert and then down the trail and in, and I just gave it all that thing had, but I still came up 2.5 minutes or so short from getting fourth place. But that was memorable, just being, part of the Ford Performance team and being the first Bronco that was of the privateer Broncos, not the first 3 that Ford built, to finish hammers. So that was an awesome experience. Hoping for even better ones this next Hammers. Hopefully we'll have everything a lot more dialed in and be ready to go and really compete.
And you raced Baja this last year as well, too, right, with Ford?
Mm-hmm. A month ago. So that was last year. We had the long run, peninsula run from the bottom back to the top. So our section was like 465 miles or something, and that was amazing. But it took like 12 hours all through the night and into the next morning. And this year, we were driving the Ranger Raptor and with Bailey Campbell and Lauren Healy, and we drove all night in that. But it took me. That course was so rough. It was dang near 10 hours to go 200 of the 283 miles that we had to go. And it was everything I could. It was nonstop. Left foot on the brake, right foot on the gas, both hands on the wheel. The only time I got to relax or not worry about getting stuck or having an issue was we had 60 miles of pavement, and everything else, tractor trail, Matomi Wash. We had to fight for everything we had in that, but it was amazing nonetheless. Like the way Ford puts the car together, Huseman and Lovell's work and dedication to making sure those cars are right. I mean, it's just crazy taking stock cars. And I always figured that you'd push the rules a little bit, and Ford holds true to everything. We run stock cars, and there's no cheating, there's no putting this in instead of that. It's really a testament to the heritage of Raptor, what it is, and its ability to perform in the most extreme environments.
So on a team like that, do you get a chance to pick what section you want to drive, or is it assigned? What's the deal with that?
I think it's the top guys, Brian Novak at Ford Performance, Brad Lovell, and Lauren. I think they kind of all talk and know everybody's strong suits, and put people where they're going to serve the race the best. And so it works out. I really actually love driving at night. It's my favorite. I love being focused on what you can see in front of you. You don't get lost in the beauty of Baja, which is a good and a bad. But driving at night, you're zoned in, and I love driving at night. It's one of my favorites.
Being able to drive at night would be nice. I know I couldn't do it because of wearing contacts or glasses, and my vision wouldn't be good at night. But what kind of strategy goes into, getting your race laid out and ready to run?
So we really, like with the Ford group, that's one thing we did. We break up in our individual groups. We're able to set with the time frame that we have, where we want to run, what terrain's there. We look at where all the silt is. We try to plan extra time to really strategize in the silt to make sure that you're not getting stuck. You're not going to be one of the cars that stays stuck there or doesn't finish the race because they couldn't get out. So we really put a lot of effort into knowing where to go, where to be, what to do. And so that's amazing. We always will run at night. And I mean, you just see everything looks a little bit different at night. And so, you want to be kind of like master what you can in the day, make sure you can run it in the night. So you recognize whether it's formations and features that help dictate, where you are, or when there's big turns coming, or things that, there's a lot of things you want to be able to read ahead of the GPS. And so you're trying to identify those and pick out features in the land that, kind of signify that you're getting close to that. So you're not relying solely on the navigator to tell you, and you're just able to make decisions a lot faster. And that the ability to decide fast and react fast at the end of the day is what makes, you go from a normal driver to a fast driver, is that the ability to process information.
So basically, if you're always running at night, are you pre-running at night as well, or just memorizing through the day and then racing at night?
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about what you got going on with your own business and how that all works into with the Ford program and Jeeps and that kind of stuff.
Big things that we have is we've been fortunate to get involved with Post Performance, which is, Post Malone's dad and him. and we build a lot of Ford vehicles for them, and we're building a Raptor R to race the Mint 400 as a collaboration with Ford Performance, Post Performance, and us. So we just took delivery of that truck yesterday, so we'll get started working on that next week. Hammers prep, so Hammers is a big deal, Mint 400 is a big deal. Then the Ultra 4 West Series, having some events back in Moab, a lot of great events for that this coming year. The Nevada 600 with unlimited off-road racing. A lot of really good races coming up and a lot of great things to be involved in. So being able to run a Bronco and a Raptor R is going to be a phenomenal opportunity for us.
So all your racing now is wrapped around the Ford Performance and the Ford brand. So talk a little bit about Post Malone and what you got going with him, if you can, a little more deeply.
Awesome guy, loves vehicles. First truck we did for him was a dually with Kelderman suspension, and delivered it to his house. Taught him how all the buttons work so he could use everything that he had on it. Then I really started becoming really good friends with his dad, and we redid the 6x6 for eBay Motors for SEMA a few years ago. And then pretty much ever since that, we've always got 2 projects in the shop. For him, we work a lot with Camberg and Magnaflow. We've built him 2 Super Duties, 2-door Bronco, 4-door Bronco, Bronco Raptor. And the next projects we have coming back is the extra stuff on the Bronco Raptor and his Raptor R. And so he's a Ford fanatic, and we get to just build some pretty awesome machines for him.
It's pretty awesome to have a client like that, that you kind of get to do whatever needs to be done.
It is. It's a good feeling to know when there's people that seemingly have everything, that you're able to do something that they care about, that's what they want to do when they come home and have time off. And his dad is just an outstanding, just an awesome guy. I mean, there's not many people out there better than him.
Well, that's cool. You just never know with celebrities how they're really going to be until you hear, a story like yours and the Malones. That's pretty cool. So coming up, what do you got going on? And, what places do you like racing?
Yeah, the Mint 400 is, when you look at all the facets of making an off-road event more than just the race, the Mint really does that. I really love working with the Martellis and being able to go down Fremont Street and talk to customers and have vendor displays, and then the VIP area, the short course, all the activation stuff they're doing. They've really got that figured out. You just look at all the other promoters and, they need to capture on that. And I love, what the Martellis are doing with paying back to the drivers. One of the simplest things that really is big for me is when they do a so-and-so is coming and they put your picture up and they're giving back to you saying, this person's committed to come run our race. We're letting everybody know he's coming. And it's just simple things like that that really go the extra mile, for me to be able to go out and say, hey, everybody, look, we're going to go race the Mint 400. They care enough about it. They collaborate with us on posts. They do things, and they're telling the world that we're coming to race their race, and nobody else does that. And that's something that I really, really appreciate from them.
Besides those that you've gotten to work with, what is it that has really kept you going in off-road?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just so grateful to have had so many years in the off-road industry, to have been able to be part of, I call it the revolution of rock crawling, in the late 99 and early 2000s, when moon buggies came about and John Nelson and everybody's idea. I'm grateful, for John Gilliland for giving us a chance to build the K2 for him and what we learned doing that. And really the great friendships and relationships, that we've made over the years. It's really a family, not just a regular community. We're all family. We're all out to do a good job. Friends off the course, really good friends, still competitors on course, but always willing to help out. I look at every other facet of my life that isn't done with off-road racing, and I want to bring it in. I'm bringing a group of guys that bought my old race Jeep. They've started a race team, and I'm coaching them and pushing them along. I've got all my other customers, I tell them about when you're sitting in the middle of Baja and it's you and your navigator, and in my case, Nate and I sitting out there, there's nobody around to help us. It's on him to give me the information. I take the information. I make the right decisions. If we have an issue, it's on us to get that car back on the road and get going. And it's like from a team building or bonding experience, desert racing, there's nothing quite like that out there. And it's just, I love sharing that with people and trying to bring more people in to the racing community. And because it's something that I don't see anywhere else. I don't see guys out playing basketball that have that type of real camaraderie because they never had to fight for something together, where it relied on all they had to make or break something. And it's just awesome. Every bit of off-road racing, whether it's rock crawling, whether it's short course racing, you get that. It's a team effort on everybody's behalf, and you win and lose as a team. And it's just an awesome place to be.
So, what would your advice be to somebody that wants to get started in off road, whether it be rock crawling or racing or whatever? What would your advice to them be?
I think the biggest thing is to start small and to, going with, it's not that stock class cars are cheap to build. I mean, if you find an older one, they can be cheap, but it's managing your skill set with the vehicle. I have so many people and friends, they decide, the trophy trucks are where everybody wants to be, or the 6100 spec trucks. And I said they buy one and they realize I don't have the skill set to do what that truck can do and what's asked of me. They jump in and they don't perform, or they break, or they think they're going to die. And it's looking at, stock class. And I look at like the Ford platform. One of the things that we're working on, we haven't got it underway yet, but we're building stock class Ranger Raptors, and we're going to start there. I'm going to try to get 5 people committed, where we build caged, ready to race Ranger Raptors. They go out and race, they get comfortable, they learn the skills they have to have, they learn how to manage less suspension travel. And then from that, I want to graduate people into those cars, then have them move to V6 Raptors, get comfortable doing that, and then maybe move to Raptor Rs when they, finally have and can manage the horsepower with have enough driving skill to keep the car where it needs to go. But really bringing back the stock class build, taking an OE manufacturer that builds a phenomenal platform, which is Ford, doing the modifications, and then so every shop in the country, could take a Ranger Raptor, do an internal cage, put the safety equipment in, and you go out and you race and you learn to have fun, and kind of like let the Ranger Raptor take place of the VW. And so that's something that, that I would coach someone, because, there's that old meme, the quickest way to become a millionaire off-road racing is start out as a billionaire. And that is true. If you don't do things right and you don't have the right people lined up, you're just dishing out money right and left. And you don't know who's fleecing you, who's taking advantage of you. You didn't build it. You didn't figure it out. And then you're not going to be competitive, because those other guys that are in that class were either born and bred and grew up racing, or they're guys that have put a whole lot more time and effort. And money can't buy skill. Money can't buy time. Money can't buy effort. And those are the things that you've got to be willing to do. Is you've got to be willing to go above and beyond what everybody else is. And running, doing a stock class platform like that is really the best way to get into it.
Well, John, I really want to say that I'm glad that we were finally able to get this episode recorded and talk about what you've been able to do. I know you got to have a lot more stuff coming up here in the future. But
yep,
I'm glad we were able to get this part of it done.
I'm glad too. I kept wondering at what point you were going to write me off and then tell me that I don't deserve it anymore for all the effort you put in that hasn't come to fruition. So I'm glad you stuck in there with me and gave me the chance to tell our story and a little bit about us and what we have going on. And I thank you for everything you do, and participating with Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame. That's a goal I for sure have one day, is to hopefully be able to make it there and do the things I need to do now to be a legacy in off-road for everybody, and especially for my son.
Well, one of the things that you have to remember about the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame is that you can get there on wins, but it's what you give back to the community has a strong influence on who that person is that gets into the hall. And I just want to say, work toward that, and, you'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, John, thank you. It's for all the good words, and thank you for the stories. Wish you the best of luck coming up in the future. I know we'll keep in touch, and I'm always watching what you're doing. So have a good one, and thank you.
Oh, it's great. And so thank you again for everything you do. Thank you to Ford Performance and BF Goodrich Tires for believing in me and letting Nate and I go out and represent those brands and try to do the best that we can. And so it's a great place to be, but thank you for everything.
Bye-bye now.
Hey, thank you.
Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.